When defending my freedom against a neighbor's relentless HOA overreach, I never expected a midnight fence heist would turn into a hilarious showdown that would redefine community living. The absurdity of Karen's new fence sprawled across my driveway felt surreal as I paced back and forth, my mind racing faster than a caffeine-fueled squirrel. Weren't fences supposed to be for keeping things in, or in this case, out? However, judging by the smug smirk plastered on Karen's face when she proclaimed her expertises in HOA rules, it was clear she envisioned her fencing prowess as some form of neighborhood improvement. I stood at the edge of the asphalt, grappling with the thought that this woman, who apparently had little to do outside of nitpicking my lawn, where a few dandelions had found their way into existence, had unilaterally declared herself the arbiter of my property line. I growled inwardly, unwittingly summoning the DIY spirit that often lurked in the shadows of my garage, partially fueled by a recent binge of home improvement hacks on YouTube. Oh, how the tables were set to turn. Armed with an arsenal of emotions, ranging from rage to a newfound determination, I dove headfirst into the HOA bylaws, rummaging through the thin, coffee-stained copy I had stashed in the attic ages ago. My brows furrowed in concentration as I combed through the legal jargon, with words as dry as my last attempts at baking bread. Let's just say the smoke alarm and I have an understanding. Bingo! There it was, a clause regarding property boundaries and the regulations surrounding unsanctioned modifications to shared spaces. Those two sentences were like a golden ticket to freedom and revenge, a seductive combination I rarely got to enjoy. It felt more like I was about to walk into battle than to confront a neighbor, but at that moment, I noticed that my heart raced with exhilaration. Justice, I murmured to myself. Sweet, sweet justice. After a couple of cups of over-caffeinated coffee and some spirited brainstorming sessions filled with Jenna's bright ideas, like how to turn Karen's meticulously cared-for hedge into a piñata, I formulated what could only be described as my master plan of mild revenge. It came with all the necessary accoutrements of stealth, a flashlight, a pair of gloves that I had stolen from an ex, and a roll of plastic fencing. Yes, I would have what Karens everywhere would call a DIY gone wrong moment at 3 a.m. on a warm Tuesday morning. The thrill of anticipation pricked my skin as I pictured myself sneaking through the night, chuckling softly as I imagined Karen's face when she discovered that her precious fence had vanished. Little did I know that even my whimsical plans could morph into a series of fortunate misadventures. Fast forward to the witching hour. The moon glinted ominously, casting eerie shadows as I tiptoed into the night, slinking down the street like a deranged cat burglar with a vendetta against neighborhood aesthetics. My heart raced as I approached Karen's pristine yard. Suddenly, the neighbor I dismissed as a petty drill sergeant seemed more like a supervillain guarding her territory. But as I crept ever closer, a small spark of imagination flickered within me, conjuring images of a glorious suburban heist, one where I would emerge victorious, clutching the disassembled pieces of her reign of micromanagement. With each clang of the fence post I unscrewed from the ground, my resolve grew stronger. This was petty, yes, but oh, the satisfaction of ripping down the imposing symbol of her neighborhood dictatorship? Just as I reached for the final beam, a rustling noise sent my pulse racing. My heart dropped in my chest. Had the neighbors heard my clandestine operation? Was I going to be the next viral video of a local petty thief busting into a garden? I held my breath, peeking through the foliage like a voyeur in a rom-com, half expecting to find Jenna behind a shrub, whispering encouragement again. Instead, it was a raccoon, chubby and brazen, in full binge mode, rummaging through Karen's pristine trash cans. The situation quickly devolved into a slapstick comedy as I struggled between dismantling the fence and not being noticed by our furry friend, who seemed dangerously close to ruining my already nearly perfect thievery. The raccoon caught my eye, twitched its nose, and then waddled off with half of a stale roll. Finally, with Karen's new steel fence now transformed into a heap of chaos at the edge of her yard, I retreated back to the safety of my home, stifling bursts of laughter with my hand, not quite sure I had fully processed what I'd just accomplished. Dawn was breaking as I collapsed into my bed, and as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I took solace in imagining Karen's face the next morning. Would she emerge from her house with a blazer over her pencil skirt, ready to inspect her handiwork only to find a frustrating mess? Ah, the anticipation bubbled within me like soda fizz, knowing that the day would greet her with chaos served extra crispy. As expected, the sun rose to reveal the delightful decay that was once Karen's pride and joy, and I grabbed my morning coffee, yearning for a front row seat to what would undoubtedly be a spectacle worthy of neighborhood gossip for years to come. Would she summon the HOA armada? Might she rally her troops for a neighborhood intervention? Or would she finally concede defeat and recognize that beauty can be messy and spontaneous, the foundations of true community living? My heart raced as I anticipated the reaction of my self-declared nemesis. The stage was set, the curtain was about to rise. Would it be a melodrama or an uproarious comedy? I couldn't wait to find out. The morning arrived like a carnivorous beast on the prowl, eager to sink its teeth into the chaos I had unleashed upon Karen's domain. From my perch on the patio, cradling a steaming cup of coffee in hand, I felt like a conductor about to lead a symphony of delightful disarray. With the residual glow of early sunrise casting a warm hue across the scandalous scene, I leaned forward in eager anticipation. Oh, how I longed to witness Karen's first reaction as she flung open her door like a discriminate monarch surveying her disobedient subjects. Would her carefully coiffed hair frizz out in horror? Would her perfectly pressed blouse wrinkle in utter disbelief? The stage was set, and I, a humble witness to destiny, sat back, ready to revel in the unfolding drama. Around the corner, I heard a rustling, a mixture of laughter and whispers that tickled my eavesdropping senses. Jenna, in her vibrant floral ensemble, appeared as if materializing from a Pixar movie, bursting with enthusiasm. "Did you do it? Did you actually do it?" she exclaimed, nearly bouncing up the driveway in excitement, her red hair catching the morning light like an electrified flamingo. My grin must have spread across my face like a cheesy pizza commercial as I nodded solemnly, taking a dramatic sip of coffee to savor the flavor of impending chaos. Jenna leaned closer. "Oh, Alex, imagine her face. She'll be furious." I couldn't help but snicker at the thought. Karen Hastings, the self-proclaimed overseer of our suburban utopia, faced with a DIY disaster of her own making. And then it happened. Karen flung open her door, her militant posture cast aside as she stepped out onto the porch, wearing what could only be described as a mixture between a power suit and 80s nostalgia, complete with shoulder pads that could double as warning signs for nearby aircraft. Her expression morphed into disbelief when she encountered the disaster that lay beyond her modest petunias. Alarming exclamations erupted from her. Words like unbelievable and irresponsible echoed through the crisp morning air. Peering out from behind the safety of my shrubbery, I couldn't help but bask in the sweet, intoxicating aroma of chaos that wafted over me. The glee bubbled within me, reminiscent of the fizz before a soda explosion. Karen, clad in authority, clicked her tongue as she stomped toward the chaotic heap of fence remnants. The neighbors, officially now part of the unsuspecting audience, began to gather, clutching their coffee cups like spectators at a Broadway premiere. I noticed them exchanging curious glances as the crescendo of accusatory tirades spilled from her lips, her frantic movements a symphony of indignation. "I can't believe someone would dare infiltrate my property line," she bellowed, pointing in my direction, though, thanks to my camouflage of shrubbery, she hadn't pinpointed me yet. A test of patience for all observers, her diatribe punctuated by over-exaggerated hand gestures quickly merging into a fretful cacophony of Karen-esque fury. It felt like a well-rehearsed drama unfolding before me. Not only was I an unwitting participant in this farce, but I had unwittingly curated my very own viral moment. As her anger reached a climax, I noted how she'd morphed from the neighborhood power broker into a spoof of a wild animal, wild-eyed and flustered. In stark contrast, my neighbors couldn't contain their mirth, chuckling quietly, but not enough to give me away. Suddenly, a delightful thought struck me. What if I further ignited this simmering volcano of neighborhood hysteria? Jenna, let's do something outrageous, I whispered conspiratorially, excitement shifting into brainstorming overdrive. As we scrambled to hatch an additional plot, right there among the growing audience, my mind whirred. How about a sign? You know, something cheeky? Jenna caught my enthusiasm and immediately began jotting down ideas on her phone, her fingers dancing as if composing a love letter to chaos. We crafted mock safety cones labeled "fenced in for your safety" and contemplated illustrations of raccoons, a possible reference to my late-night thievery partner. With each new suggestion, our plan grew funnier and more absurd. Would it be too petty to tie one of the cones to her fence remnants? Ah, but the beauty lay in the delicious pettiness of the moment. Before we finalized our scheme, Karen's loyal loafer-clad neighbor, Mr. Diggins, stepped forward, his attempts at maintaining authority overshadowed by an inevitable alliance with the mischievous plot. Karen, I think you might want to take it easy, he managed through chortles of laughter. You and the fence might want to have a serious talk. Karen, caught off guard, momentarily faltered as her eyebrows shot up, searching for the last vestige of her authoritative composure. What a delight it was to witness her unraveling. There she stood, at the precipice of humiliation, crashing into a glimpse of her misery, while my plan ignited like kindling under a dancing flame, sending sparks flying in the most entertaining way possible. Finally, the show came to a head when I unveiled our cheeky signs, Jenna holding them up like banners of rebellion and community spirit. Karen's face turned a remarkable shade of crimson, flustered fury washing over her like burnt toast. As my neighbors united in a chorus of supporting laughter and intelligent quips, I couldn't help but chuckle deeply at the realization that sometimes it really is the little things in life, fences, petty grievances, and a small heist, that remind us all to find humor in the absurdities that often govern our lives. The laughter, the joy of camaraderie, felt like a salve over the minor grievances of HOA regulations and overzealous neighbors. And as Karen stood there, seething amid her ruined fence and the laughter of her fellow residents, one question loomed large in my mind. Would she finally give up the fight? Or was this just the opening act of a more elaborate absurdity still to unfold? The comedic masterpiece I had orchestrated was reaching its crescendo, and yet it felt as if the show had barely begun. Karen's indignant expressions shifted rapidly, each revealing a different shade of bafflement. I swear the neighbor across the street, Mrs. McKinley, was about to fall over in her slippers. She was laughing so hard she could barely contain herself. Even Mr. Diggins, the much too polite accountant, was spluttering through coughing fits, trying to regain composure but failing spectacularly. Watching the scene, I couldn't help but feel that the universe had bestowed upon me the rare joy of chaotic harmony. Everyone was united in amusement at Karen's expense, while her carefully curated world teetered on the brink of disaster. Did it feel wrong? Not a chance. This was suburban warfare at its finest, a playful dance on the knife edge of acceptable prankery. Amid the cacophony of snickers and Karen's escalating rant, Jenna and I crafted our next move with the stealth of experienced strategists. The signs we had made now became a symbol of collective rebellion against Karen's unyielding authority. Let's get her to personally guide the HOA's fence inspection committee right here and now, I suggested, my brain racing as hilarity struck in the most absurd of ways. Jenna, always the vivacious accomplice, nodded in agreement with a look of delighted mischief. We sketched out our battle plan while the echoes of Karen's fury washed over the group like an angry tide, creating an electric atmosphere as our community found comedic respite in her turmoil. Just as we were brainstorming the finer points of our ruse, Karen finally embarked on her next act of hysterical desperation, a move straight from the annals of dramatic performances. Clenching her phone with urgency like a lifeline, she called for backup, presumably the HOA higher-ups, brandishing her threats like swords in a medieval duel. "This is a violation! I will have this dealt with immediately," she screeched, her voice reaching that ear-piercing pitch that could only be referred to as Killer Karen. I couldn't help but contemplate how much more amusing this could become. What if we fabricated an HOA rule stating she was officially out of bounds on her own property? After all, it was a clear case of misunderstanding her own overbearing regulations. The prospect was a laughter-inducing golden ticket I couldn't resist. As Karen fumed, pushing her hair back as if flattening oncoming storms, others began to chip in with their gem-like observations. Maybe she could install a revolving door, offered one neighbor, earning a hearty laugh. Another chimed. Or she could hire an HOA rep for emotional support. The community's solid camaraderie began to blossom, each chuckle tightening the bonds of laughter shared among us. Feeling like a maestro whose symphony was unfolding beautifully, I couldn't resist the addition of minor chaos. Nothing too severe, just a sprinkle of absurdity to keep the momentum alive. With that, I suggested we masquerade as an official HOA committee for the day, inquiring about Karen's fence mishap as lovingly as possible, pushing her to the absolute brink. What a splendid day this was turning out to be. The pièce de résistance of our prank occurred when I grabbed a wig from my Halloween supplies, a big, curly number fit for a faux HOA executive. Jenna giggled uncontrollably as I donned my ridiculous new look, platform shoes pinching my feet but making me feel like an all-powerful diva strutting just outside the gates of reason. "Let's do this," I announced with a flair that would make Broadway proud. While I strutted toward Karen, whose irate demeanor was matched only by the fiery red of her lipstick, Jenna followed closely, clutching a clipboard that eerily resembled an official document. My neighbors, of course, were in stitches, and even Karen's pet poodle seemed aghast, mirroring her owner's strain radiating from every fur-laden pore. As I reached her, I cleared my throat and spoke in a delightfully exaggerated tone. "Excuse me, Miss Hastings. We are here from the HOA's Emergency Committee for Fencing and Emotional Support." I glanced at Jenna, who was barely containing her laughter, desperately scribbling what appeared to be mock observations on her clipboard. "We would like to hear your thoughts on why your fence decided to mysteriously vanish in the night. A public safety hazard indeed." Seeing the color drain from her face was a satisfying reminder. This wasn't just a petty prank. It was sheer poetic justice. While I reveled in her mounting annoyance, I couldn't shake the glee at the thought of how cleverly absurd our grips on this wonderful neighborhood had become. Karen's face morphed into a furious mask, simultaneously flustered and confused. She began to stammer, pointing incredulously at my ensemble as I pranced around like the self-appointed queen of absurdity. "This is utterly ridiculous. You think this is amusing? I'll call the police." Her outrage paired with the hilarity of the moment was a sight to behold. But honestly, did she truly believe invoking the authorities on a prank would serve her? The laughter in the crowd turned palpable, a growing chorus, underscoring the absurdity of this whole encounter. As I gave one last exaggerated bow, a cheer erupted from the crowd. The laughter filled the air like a delightful balm, healing the wounds of HOA tyranny with just enough ridiculousness. One thing was for sure. With each moment that passed, we had unwittingly turned Karen's morning of mayhem into a treasured memory for the community. What absurdities would the HOA president conjure next? Would this be the end of her reign of frustration, or just the opening act of an even crazier rivalry? As the laughter echoed around us, I couldn't hide the smirk plastered on my face. Nothing could quite compare to that feeling of having the neighborhood rally behind our little rebellion. It was like I had sparked a movement, the kind that not only enjoyed a shared chuckle over Karen's piercing rage, but also poked fun at the very essence of what made her tick. I gestured dramatically toward my faux clipboard, letting my inner sycophant out to play. "Ah, Miss Hastings," I continued, with a flamboyant flourish. "A peer review of your fencing strategy is essential here. Let's discuss what strategies you might employ to prevent future incidents." It was clear that I was treating this intense moment of chaos like an impromptu theater performance, and judging by the audience's reaction, I was nailing it. "Seriously, though, are we getting paid for this?" Jenna chimed in with a giggle, barely able to keep her eyes straight as she played along. I had to admire her ability to engage in the absurdity while suppressing her laughter. My neighbors were lapping it all up, faces alight with glee, like kids with sprinklers on a hot summer day. But Karen, in her pencil skirt and tailored blouse, stood like a statue, carved from marble, chiseled from a stone of incredulity and rage. The crowning moment was when Mr. Diggins, not known for his daring spirit, nudged forward and yelled, "You see, Karen? Yet another reason to avoid those HOA committee meetings with your expertise in fencing. Your fences have their own escape plan." The crowd erupted as Karen's jaw clenched, one too many teeth gritting together in her struggle to comprehend just how many people found this newfound drama absolutely hilarious. Maybe it was a universal truth that the best way to really pack a punch during neighborhood conflict was to weaponize humor. As I stood, channeling my inner Broadway star and garishly flaunting my overpriced wig, I drew the audience closer into this unfolding comedy of errors. Each jab I took at the ridiculousness of Karen's plight only fueled her indignation further. Her hands flailed in frustration as she attempted to retake control of this situation. "This is defamation. This is downright illegal," she shouted, while I pretended to take notes with exaggerated seriousness, dutifully scribbling down her complaints. I glanced at Jenna, who was now struggling to breathe between snorts of laughter, all part of the whimsical madness. Amid this spectacle, however, I began to mull over a more decisive plan, a final act that would ensure Karen never saw the joke coming. What if we transformed her carefully controlled world into an art piece of our own design, an installation that parodied both her need for control and the elite nature of her HOA existence? My eyes flickered with mischievous inspiration. What if we painted "No Trespassing, Queen Karen's Domain" across the side of her house? I mused aloud, my voice thick with amusement. The thought of her waking up to a tourist attraction on her lawn sent fresh waves of laughter around the crowd, cementing our united front against her reign. As the idea hung in the air, the neighbors slowly began to nod, as if entranced by the vision of Karen's regretful face as she surveyed the unavoidable mockery that had been thrust upon her. The cogs of mischief were already turning in our collective minds. "Let's make it colorful too. We can even add glitter," Jenna chimed in, her radiant smile reflecting the sparkle of our robbing Karen of her precious, hard-fought dignity. This was like the ultimate form of community art, a protest against the petty beasts that ruled our neighborhood with an iron fence, and a way to showcase our social rebellion. Would Karen ever really escape our creative chaos? Just as we were about to finalize our plans, the unexpected happened. In a twist of pure irony, Karen's phone rang. The sight of her snapping it from her pocket was like watching a trigger being pulled on an elaborate trap. More furious than ever, she barked into the device, "You'll not believe what's happening. It's literally a hostile takeover." Meanwhile, I raised my hands with playful exaggeration, mouthing, "We're here for her emotional support," and there was barely a soul who could hold back the roaring laughter. If this was the beginning of a war, then we were clearly winning, and Karen was just another fallen soldier thrown into the absurdity of suburban life. As twilight began to creep in, bathing our neighborhood in hues of orange and purple, I stole a glance at Jenna, who looked equally enchanted by the unfolding drama. We had fused frustration and humor the way life's best stories often emerge. Karen's screeches morphed into unintelligible noise at this point, overshadowed by the victorious chorus of laughter emanating from the onlookers. The day had transcended mere pettiness. It was now an epic saga of the absurd, a tale that would certainly be shared at barbeces and block parties for years. What would Karen do next? Would there be a retaliatory HOA meeting? I had a sinking feeling that the plot was just beginning to thicken in the most delightfully comical of ways. In the cacophony of laughter, as Karen raged into her phone, an idea sparked brighter than a 4th of July firework in my mind. What if we didn't just stop at verbal jabs and mockery? What if, in true artistic fashion, we actually propelled our amusement into the realm of the tangible? The thought of transforming her meticulously manicured front yard into an installation that showcased her absurdity tantalized me. I imagined paintbrushes, vibrant colors, and the local gossip about the Queen of Karen framed among wildflower chaos. What if we took this anarchy one step further, Jenna? I suggested, my eyes glinting with mischief. Let's create a bizarre garden of shenanigans. Snake sculptures that seem to mock her fence and silly signs that point to her infamous complaints. Jenna's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. Yes, we'll line the path to her door with ridiculous signs, she exclaimed, trying to contain her laughter. Like, beware, Karen's kingdom of nonsense ahead, and caution, high levels of entitlement. The very image of Karen wading through a forest of absurd signage had us both wheezing with laughter. Little did Karen know that while she was busy gesticulating wildly at her phone, we were plotting the most spectacular prank since the inception of neighborhood drama. With our plan taking shape, I pivoted to the nearby crowd, wearing an exaggerated expression of innocence. No ideas here, just a casual community performance. Surely that's HOA approved. I hollered, reveling in the joy of our shared conspiratorial spirit, while knowing we were paving the path toward absurd magnificence. Under the fading light of dusk, we swiftly organized a small crew from our captivated neighbors, all eager volunteers in my proposed backyard uprising. I could feel the unspoken camaraderie in the air as everyone grabbed paintbrushes and materials, embracing the sense of mischief that permeated our otherwise mundane lives. Diggins, usually staid and solid as cement, was now sporting an apron with paint splatters that seemed to rival any abstract artist's garb. "Karma, here we come," he joked as he daubed a particularly gaudy shade of pink onto one of the impending signs. Fueled by laughter, our team worked seamlessly, each stroke of color symbolizing rebellion against Karen's reign of arbitrary rules. The entire neighborhood that once tiptoed around her diminished presence was now a canvas for joy and freedom, an unlikely hero's journey painted with laughter and creativity. As the stars began to twinkle above, casting our neighborhood in silvery glimmers, I stood back to admire our handiwork. A riot of colors decorated the once orderly chaos of Karen's yard, transforming her meticulously built domain into a DIY amusement park of social dissent. The Garden of Shenanigans, as I dubbed it, concrete flamingos adorned with tiaras capered beneath the Queen Karen banner we'd constructed, while oversized foam snakes slithered around her favorite rose bushes, creating a surrealist vision that simply begged for a social media post. I couldn't suppress the delighted bubbles of laughter rising in my chest. It felt like we had unshackled our collective creativity and let the neighborhood spirit reign free, uninhabited by the stringent shackles of Karen's personality. The climax of our grand plan launched the social absurdity into the stratosphere when we left one final touch. A bright pink lawn flamingo wearing a crown perched atop the tallest peak of Karen's picket fence, an ironic statement of unshakable entitlement in the most ridiculous way. As we scattered back to the shadows of our own homes, the anticipation of her reaction gripped the community like an incoming storm, one that promised outrageous laughter and a collective release from the HOA's iron grip. The air was thick with mounting excitement, and as I peeked through my curtains, I stumbled upon Jenna's equally eager eyes, lit with expectation. Sunrise was imminent, and with it came the unmistakable sound of Karen's furious denunciations, echoing through the neighborhood like an anthem of defeat. But instead of terror, there was a lightness shimmering in the morning air. Excitement bubbled as neighbors congregated in anticipation, ready to bear witness to the spectacle that would follow. The essence of poetic revenge was amplified by the shared laughter that rippled through our everyday lives, and the absurdity of the situation lingered like the sweet scent of a blooming flower. Would Karen succumb to this chaotic farce, or was there an equally dramatized retaliation waiting in the wings? As she stomped toward her now grotesquely colorful yard, my mind raced, eagerly awaiting the fiasco that was sure to ensue. The moment dawn broke over our neighborhood, Karen's unmistakable screeching filled the air like a symphony of indignation. "What in the name of gardening are you all laughing at?" echoed out, ricocheting off the painted walls of the houses like an overzealous echo. There she stood, with her sensible blazer still impeccably pressed despite the hour, surveying her yard's transformation with a mixture of horror and disbelief. I'd never seen a woman's expression morph through so many stages in mere seconds. A delightful mix of disbelief, confusion, rage, and the reluctant acknowledgement that she had, indeed, been outplayed. I stifled a laugh as I peered through my window, capturing Karen's Renaissance painting like facial expressions, as if she was an actor struggling to comprehend her unexpectedly bizarre role in this comedy of errors. As I watched, Jenna popped her head through my half-open door, practically bouncing with glee. I mean, he's totally made a life-size crown on that flamingo. This is pure gold, Alex. Her eyes were wide with excitement, painting a picture as colorful as the yard outside. Between her enthusiastic chatter and the rumble of laughter from neighbors gathering around, I felt the thrill of our collective victory in the air. It wasn't just a prank. Oh no, it was a full-on revolution against a tyrant who believed her picket-fenced paradise placed her above everyone else. I couldn't help but feel a little unbothered, puffing up my chest with pride as though I had just delivered the finest soliloquy to an eager audience. "We've dismantled the very fabric of her entitlement," I whispered dramatically, clutching my heart as if this moment required an Oscar-worthy performance. But Karen, ever the tenacious warrior, was rallying her troops. Out came the cries for order, her indignant speeches gathering steam like a runaway train. "Everyone will know who is responsible for this. This outrageous display. This is not an art gallery. This is my property," she declared, waving her phone around as if she were wielding a sword in battle. The neighbors exchanged bemused glances, their expressions ranging from entertained to semi-awestruck. It was clear they were thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Meanwhile, I could sense the creeping horror on her tightly wound face as she gradually comprehended the depth of her own absurdity. What was once the status symbol of her immaculate entitlement now stood as a canvas mocking her very existence in this neighborhood. With each shout and gesticulation, my resolve grew stronger. "Let's give her something to remember," I shouted over the commotion, throwing my hands up in the spirit of camaraderie. The crowd erupted into cheers, uniting behind me like a ragtag army ready to storm the gates of absurdity. Their laughter ricocheted off the walls like infectious jazz, a melody I'd never realized I needed until this very moment. I could almost feel the disconnected strings of Karen's sanity snapping one by one as more neighbors gathered to take in the glorious, uproarious chaos. This wasn't mere retaliation. This was the birth of a community, and it felt fantastic to be at the helm, leading the charge into battle against dysfunctional authority. Jenna turned to me, her smile wider than a Cheshire cat. "We should start a neighborhood support group for those affected by unnecessary fences," she cried, doubling over in laughter at her own suggestion. The absurdity of it all sent us spiraling into giggles at the ridiculousness of the situation. Who'd have imagined that something as simple as a rainbow of paint and a horde of exuberant laughter could redefine power dynamics in our little corner of the world? Heck, if our neighborhood ever needed an annual celebration, I was pretty sure it would revolve around painted flamingos and Karen's infamous authority. I pretended to jot down notes, causing more chuckles to bubble over. "Our first meeting will be held right here in Karen's garden, following the protest. Please bring snacks." Just as Karen began to attempt some half-hearted damage control, attempting to tear down the kingdom of nonsense signs that clearly brought us all joy, Mr. Diggins casually strolled over, wearing an apron and wielding a paintbrush like a knight bearing arms. "Might I suggest adding more pink? A bit more shimmer wouldn't go amiss," he offered sarcastically, channeling his inner artist while clearly relishing Karen's escalating fury. From there, it became a competitive affair as everyone struck a pose in favor of more ideas that could add to the ridiculous spectacle. "Slather some glitter on those flamingos," echoed one voice from the crowd, and another chirped. "Bright yellow signs warning of entitlement ahead. We need a highway leading to the kingdom of nonsense." Our laughter grew contagious, mixing with Karen's escalating rants to create a rich tapestry of rebellious hilarity. As her protest grew increasingly wild and desperate, Karen's inherent authority cracked under the pressure of collective mirth. It was a delightful moment of poetic injustice, and I relished the chaos from the comfort of my front porch, watching my neighbors band together against the iron grip of conformity embodied by their HOA president. Just as I thought it couldn't get any better, the hovering helicopter of levity landed softly when she finally made a futile attempt to reclaim her power. "I don't need to take this nonsense. I'll be contacting the police," she shouted. But the crowd erupted into uproarious laughter, a symphonic reminder that her fight had already been lost in the court of public opinion. In a classic moment of comic timing, Jenna stood beside me and shouted, "Good luck. Their number is on the other side of the fence." The humor echoed through the crowd, and it was clear, like candy floss delightfully spun in the summer breeze, this was only the beginning of her overtly destroyable reign. Ultimately, the rest of the day melted into cherished memories of laughter, rebellious camaraderie, and the sweet relief of community spirit. As the sun set on the horizon, Karen retreated into her home, fuming but also, perhaps, a little enlightened, or so I hoped. I raised a mug filled with sparkling soda on my front porch as if toasting the sheer absurdity of it all, while my neighbors joined in, their laughter mingling in the air, echoing through our shared collective moment. And in that idyllic neighborhood, I realized we had crafted something beyond a mere prank. We had cemented the idea that entitlement could indeed be met with joyfully orchestrated creativity. After all, who needed fences when you could stitch the neighborhood together with laughter, color, and vibrant chaos?